Welcome to episode 101 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm actually Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing screenwriters Alistair Legrand and Luke Harvis, who recently wrote a horror film called The Diabolical. We dig into their early careers and how they eventually got this film produced, so stay tuned for that. This episode is brought to you by Final Draft, the industry standard screenwriting software. Final Draft is used by top studios, production companies worldwide, as well as today's best screenwriters like Aaron Sorkin, J.J. Abrams, Nancy Myers, Matthew Weiner, Zach Penn, and many, many more. Get a copy of Final Draft for your desktop or mobile device and start writing in minutes. Visit finaldraft.com for more information. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 101. Couple of quick notes. I continually build out the SYS script library. I just posted the screenplays for Good Will Hunting, Maiden, Dagenham, Moonrise Kingdom, Notting Hill, and Philomena. They were sent in from screenwriter Nancy Zaro. So thank you very much, Nancy, for sending those scripts in. If you have a screenplay that you do not see listed in the SYS script library, please do email it to me. The SYS script library is completely free. We have over 1,000 scripts in the library, many hit movies, award winners, television shows. All the scripts are in PDF format, so you can download and read them on whatever device you see, whatever device you use. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/library. If you want to get my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address, and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So I have a little bit of follow-up today from episode number 96, which was a interview I did with a writer and producer named Scott Morgan, who is over in China. And the episode was all about finding opportunities for screenwriters in China. One of the things I mentioned when I published the episode was he gave some great advice for people that wanted to pursue these opportunities. And the key to that advice was, moving to China. And after I had the interview, I got to thinking, well, I'm not in a position that I could just pick up and move to China. I have small children, have a wife and family here. So that's not something that I can do. And I was thinking, I wonder how I could actually get into these opportunities. And one of the screenwriters who listens to my podcast, Karen McCain, she actually was smart enough. I'm not sure why I didn't think of this, but it was smart of her. She actually went and sent Scott an email basically asking that question. And I'm just going to read her email. I'm going to read her email, and then Scott replied to her email. So I'm going to read Scott's reply, because I think this is a very valid point. I think there's a lot of opportunities in China. If you're young, you don't have a lot of family obligations, you can probably pick up pretty easily and go to China and kind of explore some of these things. It would probably be an interesting adventure, even if it didn't materialize into some actual screenwriting opportunities. It would probably be something fun to do for 6 months or a year. But you definitely need to be unencumbered from family obligations. So Karen asked that very question. So I'm going to read her email, and then I'm going to read Scott's response. I think it's very, very interesting. So here's what Karen's email said. Ashley said later that he forgot to ask what would you advise writers to do if they can't move to China in terms of getting a script made. Ashley also mentioned in his 100th episode, let's see, so that's basically the question. Ashley said later that he forgot to ask what would you advise writers to do if they can't move to China in terms of getting a script made. So then Scott responded, "Hello, Karen, and thank you for the cool email. Is that your photo in the film?" Okay. Moving to China or any other Asian city does not much increase your odds at first to get a film funded. The goal still takes a lot of effort. The advantage that you are in a smaller area and are seen as more skilled due to being from Hollywood. This gets you more important meetings. But Chinese people are reluctant to forge ahead without a name attached, as is the case in Hollywood. And what he means there, but a name actor. So you want, just like in China, just like here in Hollywood, movies really, the stars really are very important. Getting those stars attached is very, very important. Anyways, back to the email. You win them over with other skills and sacrifices. You cement your relationships. Then you get the offers for distribution or co-production. What to do here in your case is, number one, go to the Hong Kong Film Festival and Japan Film Festival coming up early in the year. Keep tabs on seminars here for Asia in film. Reach out to the Korean and Chinese cultural and financial special groups here in LA and meet with them. They might open doors for you. The other thing you might be able to do is some rewriting on screenplays they might have there in Beijing, though it's rough long distance. Most people have to resort to raising funds in the U.S. first. Then the Chinese match the funds. But you are once again in the situation of raising some funds here. You can also study the trade mags and see which companies have deals with China and try to meet with them and see if they go to pitch festivals. The final way is if you expand your production team with someone that has access to China, like me or another manager, and work through them. However, that usually, again, requires some expenses. A manager or other producer would charge a fortune. I'd think at least $25,000, probably more like $50,000 to $100,000, because it has to be worth their time, and they need to be signed on a de facto production, be signed on as a de facto producer. I don't work that way. I work more as a consultant part of a relationship. So I think there's a couple of interesting parts to this. Scott is basically just giving some sort of common sense advice, which, if I had thought about it, probably is where I would have ended up. I mean, there's definitely companies here in the United States that are cutting deals with these Chinese companies and finding those companies, doing what he's saying, reading the trade mags. If you can go over for a visit and perhaps go to some of these Asian film festivals, these Asian film markets, there's got to be, I've talked about this on the podcast quite often, American film market. There's got to be something in Asia similar. I'm not sure what that is, but there's got to be something like the American film market for the Asian markets as well, going over to those types of things and just trying to pitch your projects and get to know those people. It really is, I think the key sort of what Scott's getting at here is, it's all about networking, and it can be easier in China because, as he says, if you are from the United States and you go over there, there's this sort of idea that you're more skilled. Because you're from the United States, you're a little more sophisticated as a writer, so you have a little bit of a leg up. There's just an aura about being an American in China that, the other Chinese writers you might be competing against simply don't have. So that can be good. But at the bottom, the bottom line really is it's just about building relationships. It's about figuring out where these people are hanging out and then approaching them one way or another. So, Karen, thank you very much for sending that in. I think that does offer some good suggestions for people that potentially can't move to China but still might want to pursue this a little bit. So now a quick few notes about what I'm working on. Last week, I got some notes back on the spoof I'm working on. I met with the producers, actually went into the office, and we had a nice meeting. One of the big notes I got from my writers group, and it was kind of a similar note from the producers, is that I think there's a lot of funny bits, but the main characters aren't really somebody you care about just because they were kind of portrayed as being kind of dumb. And in a spoof, you think, well, this is actually probably okay. And it just really kind of takes the heart out of it. There's not really any real stakes. And even in a spoof that works, any movie that works, ultimately it has to have some real stakes that the audience cares about. And that's kind of I would say the big note I got from my writers group as well. A lot of people in the writers group thought it was funny, but that was kind of the one big knock was, hey, the stakes are pretty low because you don't really care about ultimately what these guys accomplish because they're kind of dumb and there's just nothing really that's drawing you in. So that was kind of the producer's note as well. So I'm going to go through and take another pass at this and basically really rewrite. There's 3 sort of parallel storylines. So these main characters, there's only one. There's really like 4 storylines, and these main characters have one of the storylines. So it's not as huge as it may sound, and the actual structure is actually, pretty good. Like the midpoint and the act breaks, those are pretty much intact. It's just a matter of new characters, and then, you know, by having new characters, obviously the dialogue will change and the situations will change, but the basic sort of core structure as far as the midpoint and the act breaks, I think that's probably okay. But as I said, the situations will need to change, so it's going to be quite a bit of work. And then the other big note that the producers got was integrating the other storylines. As I said, there's basically 4 storylines, so we need them all to converge. You know, again, it's a spoof, so I was a little fast and loose on the logic. So by the third act, I need something that kind of draws these other storylines more into the central main storyline, just so it all kind of adds up at the end. Right now, it's kind of more coincidental. Everyone sort of shows up at the same point, so they're kind of involved in some degree. They're involved, but they're not involved in terms of actually having stakes and how the thing turns out. So again, that's going to be a little bit of work. There's a bunch of other little tweaks that they mentioned. They don't like some of my gross out humor, which I thought was funny. They weren't that high on that. And that's mainly from a distribution angle. As I said, these producers are also sales agents and distributors. So that's one of the interesting things. And one of the reasons I'm doing this project is to learn sort of more about that world. And it's interesting hearing some of their comments. Again, it's like, oh yeah, this joke is pretty funny. However, I think this will really limit us in terms of how we can find distribution. So that's important, just little things to understand and know. And it's not something that I would really know. I just, you know, from a writer standpoint, you're writing a comedy, so you just want to make it as funny as possible. But then talking to them and hearing, yeah, this actually is kind of funny, but it's just never going to fly. So there's a little bit of work on there. They want to draft back. I'm actually recording this the Monday before Thanksgiving. It'll actually air after Thanksgiving, but I'm recording it the Monday before Thanksgiving. So they want to draft back the day before Thanksgiving. So it's Monday. So I've got basically 3 days here to really knock it out. I've done a little bit of sort of some of the legwork over the weekend. I met with them Friday, done a little bit of the legwork, kind of trying to think through some of these things, and then got to open up a script after I'm done with this podcast and really start ripping through it. And as I said, get them another draft, you know, by end of day on Wednesday, and then they can read it over the holiday and hopefully start getting it out. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on. Let's get in now to the main segment of the podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Alistair Legrand and Luke Harvis. Here is the interview. Welcome, Alistair and Luke, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having us. This is awesome.
So to start out, I wonder if you guys can just give us a quick overview of your kind of careers in the entertainment industry, how you got started and eventually got to the point where you guys were writing this most recent film. Luke, why don't you go ahead and start?
You know, I went to film school in Savannah, Georgia. And then I moved out to LA about a year after I graduated. I did some PA work on sets. I was like a tour coordinator for a group of actors at one point for about 6 months. Then I worked at Fox Sports for 7 years. And during that time, Alistair and I were writing. You know, I had like a day job just grinding out the days, and then we would work, you know, in the evenings. But that is like my uneventful, you know, storm into the...
Okay, so... Alistair, why don't you go ahead and give us a quick overview of your background?
Well, I went to film school in Canada at Vancouver Film School, which is a great place. And then I couldn't work there because I'm a U.S. citizen, so I moved down here and I worked in commercials for a really long time for really intense, angry people. And I would take that money as a PA I made in commercials and then find bands on Craigslist. Not great bands, but, you know, tiny little things. And I would make music videos for them and produce them and do all the set design myself. And I was working with the same cinematographer the whole time. And that's how we really learned the nuts and bolts of filmmaking. And then eventually music videos and commercials kind of became my full-time job as I started to get more and more labels and bands. And that's how I really prepared and learned for the feature film experience. And yeah, Luke and I would just work almost every night just trying to write those first 5 really bad screenplays or first 10 just to figure out how to structure scripts and figure out how to tell an interesting story in 98 pages.
Yeah.
I was intensely jealous of Alistair when he was like doing commercials, you know, and I was like going to my day job. Like, I mean, that's, you know,
Yeah.
In part, I think he sort of helped motivate me in a way also. Seeing someone actually do it was nice.
Yeah, we should, I should say that Luke and I have been friends since we were like 12 years old. So we've known each other for quite some time, and I've always wanted to make movies. So it was, once I moved out to LA, it was just kind of perfect to have him as my writing partner.
And did you guys, so you grew up together and then both were in Georgia and then you happened to go to college in Canada and then Alistair, you guys both moved to LA independently or you guys reconnect?
It's a little bit more complex. We grew up in Philadelphia, right outside of it. I grew up in a town called Bryn Mawr and Luke grew up in a town called Penn Valley, and we ended up splitting roads, and he went to college in Savannah, and then I went to Canada, and then we just met up years later and started writing screenplays.
But yeah, that was kind of independent. We just sort of both found our way out here.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me dig in, Alistair, just to a couple things you said. I really admire people that kind of just take the bull by the horns and go out there and basically grab a career for themselves. So let's dig in a little bit to these music videos. You're saying you're getting people off of Craigslist. I'm assuming in those early days, most of those people have next to no money to pay you. So you're just kind of doing these things for the experience. Are you making a little bit of money? Are you losing money? What's the logistics of that?
I'm just losing money. I would just take my paycheck, and so it'd be like $1,000 for the week as a production assistant on sets. And so then I would put that all into the video itself and paying for like the studio time and the equipment and the lenses. And we would beg, borrow, and steal just to be able to afford the ability to direct, to make a music video in one day. And it's just a great way to learn how to do it. A lot of people do short films, but I just really enjoyed coming up through filmmaking through music videos because you really do still have to tell a story within 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. It really helped my foundation.
And maybe you can give us just some quick tips. So you said you found these bands on Craigslist. What are they doing on Craigslist? Are they advertising, hey, we have a show this weekend? Like, just give our listeners kind of an idea of how, if they wanted to repeat this model, exactly what would they do? And what is your email pitch like, look like to them?
I don't know how it is now. It's probably a lot more crowded, the landscape, but you could go on and sometimes bands will just put out like, we need a music video for no money, and they'll put that, and you can apply to that and meet interesting people and try to make music videos for them. And occasionally I would just find a smaller band just through, back then it was MySpace, and I would reach out to them, and now you can do it through Facebook, and you could just, if you're a fan and you can do it politely, just try to say, hey, I'd love to make a music video for you. I'd love to try to do this. And if you show them references and kind of give them the confidence in you that they need, then you can probably make a music video for them. It's just about finding the right people and really having the go-getter attitude to try to convince people that you should make something that's not going to totally suck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so how many, over the course of these years you're doing this, how many would you estimate of these music videos you did for basically no money?
The smaller ones, I must have done just like 20, between 20 and 30. But that's still a lot because they end up taking months of editing and working it out. And I did enough so that I was able to build a reel so that when I actually joined a music video company, they were able to see that I had a bit of a vision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you also talked about commercials. Were you doing basically spec commercials as well, or was that more when you started to actually get professional gigs?
Yeah, spec commercials for sure. And I did smaller commercials for web only for companies like Sony and this other company called Direct Marketing, and it just worked out. The commercials still had smaller budgets, but it definitely helped me learn how to kind of encounter that world and learn how to talk to commercial producers and labels themselves.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find those gigs and find those jobs?
Just through, after doing the music videos for smaller bands, I joined a company called The Masses, which is in Los Angeles, and they started to represent me as a music video director, and we would get projects to pitch on through that.
I see. And just to give us some scope, so you did 20 to 30 of these basically free music videos. Over how many years did that take to build up that many?
Oh, I'd say about 2 years. Two to 3 years, just trying to make something, but also at the same time, I was holding on to a regular job. it's really hard to function in this town without some sort of income. So you really just need to keep working and never feel depressed about just being a PA on a set or being a coordinator. Just kind of keep your feet on the ground, and you just know that you're supporting yourself to follow your dream.
Yeah. And I think I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's such great information for people to hear, that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years of no pay work on the weekends. That's what it takes to build your resume.
I graduated film school in 2006, and so that's 10 years ago. So it was, it's been that long of a road to just get to our first movie.
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's dive into your first movie, The Diabolical. Maybe to start out, Luke, you can give us a log line or kind of a pitch of the movie for people that haven't seen it or haven't seen the trailer yet.
Yeah, without spoiling it, it's a family in peril trapped in a house being visited nightly or daily by supernatural occurrences, except things aren't what they seem, and as the story unfolds, the wider scope troubling these people is revealed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because there's a twist. It's always been a little harder to describe, I think, than this is a spirit with a grudge or whatever.
Yeah, we tend to just say it's a family being haunted by what they think are ghosts, but it's much more.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Okay, so maybe you can tell us sort of the very beginning. What's the genesis of this film? Where did this idea come from? Take us back to the very beginnings of this idea.
I just wanted to. Luke and I are such huge fans of the genre and also of science fiction that we're always trying to figure out new ways to tell a story, to try to reinvent the wheel for different subjects, and especially movies we admire and plots that you just have to all the stories have been told, and you just have to kind of figure out a way to combine them into kind of an interesting stew and try to figure out a way to excite an audience again, and kind of in a genre that is kind of inundated by so much of the same story. So we're such a huge fan of poltergeist films and ghost films that we wanted to figure out a new way to tell that story and to try to figure out a new way of making it exciting. And I feel like one day I was just sitting there watching a really bad paranormal reenactment show that I'm unfortunately addicted to, like on Discovery Channel, and it just hit me that it would be a really fun. The idea came from, let's try to figure out a new way for doors to slam and rooms to get cold and objects to levitate. What's happening there, and what if we explain that in more of a science fiction way?
Okay. And about how many years ago did you guys start on this project?
Was that summer 2013? Is that right?
Yeah. Our process is we text each other dumb ideas that we're thinking of late, like at 11 at night, and then we just start thinking, oh wait, those are actually kind of cool. And then we'll start outlining it. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago, and we'll start outlining it through like Google Documents and figuring out ways to tell it. And at first, it's just a fun thing for us to discuss because we just love coming up with concepts. But this one actually became a reality.
Yeah, we have a very open policy with like sending each other stupid ideas.
Yes, that becomes good ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, just to kind of get a sense of the scope of what you guys are doing, how many ideas are going back and forth before you find one that you guys feel is good enough to flush out into an outline?
We're actually, because we're sort of ahead of the game as far as like what we're working on. So like as we're wrapping something up, we've always been talking about the next thing, like as we're working on it. So, I think we usually pass back. We usually have about 3 or 4 like ideas that we land on, maybe culled down from about 6 or 7. That we sort of like funnel into like growing enthusiasm. Like the more we talk about it, I think we both sort of just gravitate towards, what we feel most excited about, and that's kind of what we end up working on next.
Yeah, we could just be driving in a car and listening to the radio, and there's a news report on, and we'll come up with I'll mention something that would be interesting if we told a story like this, and as long as Luke agrees and, you know, we're on the same page and both as excited about it, then we figure out the way to write that script.
Mm-hmm. So how many scripts have you guys written together and independently at this point?
Oh boy. How many good scripts? We have
just total good and bad. I think that's interesting to hear.
Good and bad. I'd say about 12 at this point.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
it's not even that many for we've been at it for about 4 years full time now, just hell bent on making good screenplays. So yeah, 12 and 2 pilots.
Okay. And you've always written together. You guys haven't written anything separately, just always together.
Oh, we've written separately. I mean, I come from music videos where as a director, you're also you're writing your own projects yourself. You're just basically writing short films every time. And then I think we both attempted to write screenplays on our own, and at that point we were trading them back and forth, and it was just easier for us to sit in the same room together and work on the same one.
Mm-hmm. So take us through, you mentioned Google Docs. Take us through sort of the actual physical process. You've got, the nice thing about Google Docs is that you can collaborate in different locations. Are you guys typically, when you start doing that outline, you're in different rooms? And then just take us through the process of then once you have the outline, actually writing the script. Are you guys in different rooms, different locations, the same room?
Sure. Yeah. Luke, you want to describe the Google Docs situation?
Yeah. I mean, we're actually generally in the same room, which I guess you wouldn't really have to be with Google Docs, but we started writing in the same room, I think because maybe we didn't know any better or how other people do it. And that's just sort of been the process. Like, we're not talking the entire time, certainly. But generally speaking, yeah, we're in the same office.
It really helps with procrastination because you have another person staring you down, forcing you to finish whatever you're writing. So I'll write, if we're actually in script mode, I'll write 10 pages and then Luke will read the last 10 pages, which is fantastic because you're getting instant feedback. And then he'll do his own, and you just write as many pages as you can at the time, and then I'll go off with my headphones and write, and Luke will be working on a different outline. And then in that way we get a lot done a little bit faster than most, but it really is great for reviewing what you just wrote. And the reason why we love Google Documents is because, yeah, it's the collabo writer thing, and we still wish Final Draft would work out a way to do that. It's just really nice for us to both stare at the same thing that's coming across, and we're big outliners right now, so we love to sort of see the story as it unfolds through an outline.
And so you have two computers open in the same room. Luke has your computer, Alistair, you have yours. So then you can type them. You can see what the other one's typing, but it's two computers, not one computer.
And the other reason we love doing it in Google is because if I'm out at the grocery store or something and an idea hits me that we should add to the screenplay, I can just add it instantly, and Luke can see it. I see.
Yeah, and then so go ahead.
As I say, the nice thing about so if I write something and then Alistair reads it over, we have the policy is that he can make whatever changes he wants to what I just wrote and vice versa. So because we're two separate people, we have similar voices, but because we're two separate people, I think it really kind of synthesizes the script into it sounds like one person, because if he doesn't like, a certain turn of phrase, or I don't like a certain turn of phrase, we each get our own input into the work.
That's right. Luke is always using old-timey English.
It's really, yeah.
I'm always deleting it.
So then once you get into the screenplay writing stage, do you do that in Google Docs as well, and then just somehow convert it into Final Draft to format it at the end?
No, I'm a little embarrassed of our system. I don't know if it's good. We just do it in Final Draft and email each other the drafts from across the room, and we'll label the drafts with the exact time we finished writing, so we never make a mistake and are accidentally correcting. So it'll say the Diabolical 2:48 p.m. Alistair, and then Luke will open that and know I was the last person to write it. And it's a very archaic system, but it works for us.
Okay. Writer Duet, I've heard good things about, and they have a collaborative software, and there's a free version that you can get into. So I'll recommend that to all the readers. Yeah. That are checking out. Okay, so what happens? I've been in many writing partnerships. What happens when you guys have just a fundamental disagreement, or just even not a fundamental, but just some real strong disagreement? Does you sleep on it, you flip a coin. How do you get over those hurdles?
I mean, like if it's like past, if it's been like a 45-minute conversation and we're not making any headway. Yeah, I think usually 5, 6, 7 hours, after that, just once cooler heads prevail.
Yeah.
It becomes easier with a little bit of distance.
Yeah, our disagreements are always about the most idiosyncratic, tiny little things. It's never about, once we outline together, we're totally comfortable with the way the story is structured. So it's never about the major beats. And that really gets a lot of your arguments away. As long as you are both comfortable about the outline or treatment, then writing the script itself will generally go smoothly. But we'll argue about, like, should the mom character teach her daughter about, her mom character teach her daughter about evolution and the dinosaurs, and like, because we both come from like science backgrounds, and we're like, should we make her like that? And then Luke is very steadfast on that aspect, and like we'll argue just about like dumb, like nerdy stuff.
Or there was like
if I had a daughter, I would let her play with horses and dinosaurs at the same time, but Luke wouldn't.
That was not my argument, in fact.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting a nerve here, so we'll go ahead and move on. But interesting to hear. Okay, so now you're done with the script. You finished the script, and what was your next step after that, just to start to get it out there and raise money for this thing?
I know it was a little different than, actually, Alistair, please, that was your big...
Well, we wrote the first screenplay that we were actually really proud of that got the attention of managers and our agents was a script called Toe. Which is more of like it's like a little bit in the Steven Spielberg's Duel range. It's like a desert hitcher, a very intense, R-rated, bloody thriller. And that got the attention of various companies, so I went on generals, which I'm sure your listeners know what those are. It's when you go to meetings with companies that are interested in something you wrote, but don't necessarily want to make it, but they really like your writing style. And I went to a company called Preferred, now known as Campfire, and they really liked this one script that Luke and I wrote, and they wanted to know if I had anything about haunted houses, and it was perfect because I was like, yeah, I have this idea, which was the Diabolical, and they loved it. They loved my pitch, which I just did in the room, not expecting to do it that day. And we ended up, I called Luke immediately after the meeting, and we got a treatment together within weeks, and we were off to the races.
And why wasn't Luke, as your writing partner, why wasn't Luke in the meeting? They wanted to meet you as a director?
Correct. They really liked this music video I did for an artist named Mark Lanigan, which also features a haunted house.
I see.
So then they really liked that.
Okay, so take us through the process of taking, I guess, we're backing up, and that the script for Toe. How did you get that script out there in order to get interest from these agents and managers?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a friend who works in post-production, and she knew someone in development. So we passed it to her, and then she passed it to her friend, and I guess her friend in development actually just ended up sending it to people who, they thought that would like it.
Yeah, a little bit of luck, a little bit of a whim and a prayer. I mean, we just happened to write a script that a friend of ours really, really liked and thought was good enough to send to her friend at Fox Searchlight, and they really, really liked it. It just wasn't what they were looking for at that current time, and they ended up sending it around town, and that'll just happen. It's really just about whether you're hitting the right nerve in what people are in the people that are reading it, and we just our first script that we were happy with, really, people really liked it. So it helped us get places very, very quickly.
Did you have some scripts before that you sent out and just didn't get a good reception, or this was the first script you guys felt confident enough to actually start sending out?
It's the confidence thing, really. We had scripts before that we sent to a few places, but we kind of knew in the back of our minds that they weren't perfect yet.
We took a meeting on one, I think, before Toe, but nothing, nothing concrete, so.
Okay.
That was the first one where we really sent it to friends, family members, trusted people to read, and we did so many drafts of it and really polished it and made sure that every single word was perfect. And it was a labor of love that we really knew we wanted to go out of the gates with.
Okay. So, again, just to kind of get a sense of the scope of what you guys were doing, you sent it to this one friend in post-production who passed it along to her friend in development. Were there other people that you sent it out to who maybe liked it but didn't do anything with it, maybe even didn't like it? I just wouldn't mind sometimes hearing about those, the one success makes it sound like you sent it to one person and then it just took off, but there probably was other people that you sent it to that maybe it didn't necessarily help.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we once it was starting to kind of make the rounds and people were emailing it to each other, we definitely people would say that it was just too intense. That was the main thing. It's really hard to write hard R-rated violent thrillers these days because people aren't really into that so much. So that was our main feedback, that it was just a little bit too gross for people, which is totally fine. But Luke and I really like writing great character stories with kind of intense drama on the side. And so we wouldn't take the feedback we didn't get anything really abysmal that made us depressed about Toe. We just, it wasn't for some people and other people's really liked it.
Okay. So then let's move on to the Diabolical. So then this one company, you had the meeting and then you pitched them the idea. Did they then pay you to write the script, or did you write the script on spec and then send it in to them once you had it done?
They wanted a treatment, so we put together like a 20 or 25 page treatment, maybe, I think about 25 pages. And then they optioned the treatment after that.
I see.
Yeah, and then once they decided to option the treatment, that's when we went through the process of getting lawyers and all the fun shenanigans.
Mm-hmm. And so then they did pay you to write the actual script. That was all part of the deal.
Okay. Yeah. They were very easy to work with in development.
Okay. And this whole time, Alistair, were you sitting saying yes, and I'm going to direct it, and they were okay with that? Maybe kind of tell us how that all went down as a first-time feature film director.
Yeah.
The hell out of me.
Yeah, it's just about convincing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Luke.
I was going to say, only because I think in one of the first meetings I was in with them, they asked him if he was going to direct. And, very confidently he said, yeah. And I was like smiling and nodding, but like secretly in my head, I was like, oh man, don't screw this up for us. Because I didn't know if they were going to go for it. I thought they were, first time director, who knows.
It's, it was tough at first. I mean, it's, even if it's a small amount of money for a budget, it's still a lot to a company, and they don't want to take a gamble on a person who's never made a feature before. It's really, I really had to provide a visual blueprint for the film itself, and I made a fake trailer for it, and I showed them all my music videos, and I made a demo reel of my videos, and it was a lot of convincing that I can work, and eventually we got to the point where they gave me the project. They let me direct it because they realized that I told them music videos cost nothing these days. You get $500 and you have to make it look like $10,000. And because of that, I would have a really good place to work in lower budget horror and science fiction, because I could do a lot with a little, and that really helped out a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us about sort of the so now the movie's been made and you're out. Tell us just about the distribution on this. Did you guys go to some film festivals? How did you get into some film festivals? That kind of thing.
Yeah, we wrapped. Okay, so we shot in February 2014, and post production was pretty long because we have a lot of special effects in our film, and we finished it in October of 2014 and had a distributor screening, which is where you screen your movie. You invite a lot of potential buyers to your film to hopefully purchase it and then release it. And that went pretty well. We had some interest, and then we ended up submitting to South by Southwest and getting in. And that's where our premiere was in March this year.
Okay. And was there any, did the production company who produced this, did they have some in with Southwest by Southwest? It was just a cold submission?
It was generally a cold submission. I mean, you're still competing with thousands of other films, and everyone has to watch your screener. So I'm sure it helped to have the backing of content media, but I mean, it was definitely, it's a taste thing, once you get to that, people they need to like your movie first and foremost. Otherwise they get embarrassed because they're showing something terrible.
Yeah. And so tell me about this screening that you had for distributors to come and get. Again, that was through the production company. I mean, most people, if they have a screening for their film and they invite people, no one's going to show up. So how do you actually get distributors to come to something like that?
Our producer, Ross Dinnerstein, is very good at his job and very good at convincing people to watch his film. So we were very lucky to have Ross on board, shepherding our project. You couldn't ask for a better teammate to try to get people to watch your film and potentially buy it.
Okay, and he works at this production company who originally optioned
head of a company called Campfire who made the film.
Okay, perfect. So maybe you can just give us some release dates. How can people see The Diabolical?
October 16th. We came out on Friday in America. Video on demand everywhere. So that's iTunes, Amazon, Comcast, Cox, DirecTV. The iTunes version looks gorgeous. You could watch it that way. We're playing at the Arena Cinema in Los Angeles. And it's already been released worldwide in Asia, and in the UK it comes out this Friday.
Okay, perfect. And I always like to wrap up the interviews. Maybe you guys can just kind of tell us how people can keep up with what you're doing. You know, a Twitter handle, a blog, a Facebook page, anything you feel comfortable sharing. Just spout it out. I'll round it all up, put it in the show notes. But if people want to just touch base and kind of keep up with what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
The movie does have a Facebook page.
Okay.
Actually, should I look up the address real quick?
I'll find it. I'll find it. And I'll put it in the show notes.
It's the one. It's the one with Ali Larder in it.
Okay.
And it should be pretty easy to find. But I'm on Twitter at Alistair Legrand. That's my name. And I have you can find me on Facebook, and I also have a Tumblr.
Oh, a Tumblr. Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I signed up for Twitter at some point, and I've never done it.
Yeah. Luke's terrible at social media.
I'm not great. Not great.
Okay.
I am on Instagram, which is fun. Visual.
You're on Instagram. Okay, perfect. I'll find your Instagram, Luke, and I'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, guys, this has been a great interview. I enjoyed talking to you. I'm sure lots of value here. Lots of people can learn from it. I wish you guys luck with this movie. And next time you have a movie, definitely let me know, and I'll have you back on.
Oh, that would be amazing. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
I just want to mention two things I'm doing here at Selling Your Screenplay to help screenwriters find producers who are looking for material. First, I've created a monthly newsletter that will be sent directly to producers. Every member of SYS Select can submit one log line per newsletter. I went and emailed my large database of producers and asked them if they would like to receive this monthly newsletter of pitches. So far, we have about 170 producers who have signed up to receive it. These producers are hungry for material and happy to read scripts from new writers. So if you want to participate in this pitch newsletter and get your script into the hands of lots of producers, sign up at sellingyourscreenplay.com/select. And secondly, we partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads sites so we can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are a lot of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting about 10 to 12 high-quality leads per week. These are producers and production companies who are actively looking to buy material or are looking to hire a screenwriter for a specific project. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. These leads run the gamut from production companies looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas. We have shorts, features, producers looking for TV and web series pilots. It's a huge array of different types of projects, and these leads are exclusive to our partner and to SYS Select members, so you're not going to find them anywhere else. To sign up, go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/select. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay. It's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. I recently set up a success stories page for people who have had success through the various SYS services. So if you want to check out what some other people who have tried the SYS Select service are saying about it, go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. And there's a whole bunch of quotes from people who are using our services and having some success with them. Also, I always throw this out. If you have used one of the SYS Select services and had some success for it, please do let me know. I find these stories very inspirational. I like to try and maybe get you on the podcast to kind of talk about how your success went down. So please do email me if you've used one of the SYS Select services and had some success. A lot of times, I don't necessarily hear from the people, whether it's my email and fax blast service or it's one of these leads, the screenwriter actually negotiates with the producer. I'm not involved in that. So a lot of times I don't hear about these things until months or even years later. And I'm like, gee, you should have told me, because it's good to just hear about these stories. I like to know what stuff is actually working and where people are having success. So please do let me know if you're having some success with these services. So to wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Alistair and Luke. If you listen to this podcast regularly, I think you'll probably have some idea about what I'm going to kind of pick out of the interview as being important. I think it's so important to Alistair's story about going on Craigslist and hustling work, and even just saying, he was working during the week, he would get his paycheck, and he would spend his paycheck actually producing these music videos for these bands. And I think that's just so important to understand, hustling and getting out there and actually making things happen for yourself. If you're just a screenwriter, he's obviously a director and a writer, so I think music videos are potentially a real good fit for that. If you're just a writer, you don't necessarily want to aspire to be a director. I think doing shorts might be a better option for you, but the basic idea is the same. I mean, if you can't find a director and producer to produce your short, maybe you just go spend some of your own money and produce it yourself. Getting into producing and being a producer is a great skill to have. It's not only a great skill as a writer because you start to understand sort of the practical realities of writing, but it's great to put on your resume that you're also a producer. You can really start to be in control of your own destiny. If you can write something and then you can produce it yourself, you don't have to worry about sending out these email and fax blasts and just crossing your fingers and hoping that somebody will like it. If you have the skills to do the production, you're in control of your own destiny. And the way you're going to get that, as I said, is by doing short films. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now, but Craigslist, even to this day, is a great place to find people who are looking for shorts. So if you don't want to necessarily do a lot of producing, you can go on Craigslist, you look in the writing gig section, do a keyword search for screenplay or screenwriter, something like that, and almost every week you'll see at least a handful of these leads in the Los Angeles. I look in the Los Angeles area occasionally and the New York area. Go in there in the New York area, the Los Angeles area, or your local area. If you're in a big city, Chicago, Dallas, Austin, something like that, you might be able to even find some local opportunities on Craigslist. But really listen to what Alistair is saying. He just spent his own money directing, writing, and producing music videos for the band. He wasn't charging the band to do these. He was doing them for himself and getting value out of that. So really think about this. I see a lot of times on Craigslist people getting really annoyed. A lot of times producers will post ads and there'll be no pay for the writer. And then I see these very snarky replies where people are pissed and say stuff like, well, writers should be paid for their work. The thing you have to remember is these short films and even low budget, micro budget feature films, for the most part, the producer is not going to be making any money. So I think doing something for free when you're getting started is not a bad way to go. Listen again to what Alistair said. He was doing these things. He graduated from college in 2006, so it's been almost 10 years. So he was doing these free music videos for many, many years while working a full-time job. Not only was he doing them for free, he was actually losing money. So understand that. Sometimes that's what it's going to take, just hustling and getting stuff done. You're much better off spending a few $100s, spending $1,000, and producing a short than just constantly sending your stuff out and hoping somebody else produces it. You want to get these credits and you want to get these experiences as a screenwriter. You can start to build up your resume. You can start to network. That's how you're going to meet people. You're going to meet actors. Actors are going to know other producers and directors. You're going to meet, potentially, if you're producing and writing, you might meet a director, and that director you might form a collaborative relationship with them. So just getting out there and doing these things is just so important. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I listened to a lot of these entrepreneurial podcasts, and this was it was really an online marketing podcast. And the host was interviewing a guy that he helps musicians market themselves online. And one of the things they discussed was how so many musicians, they kind of feel like they shouldn't have to do marketing. They want to be artists, and the music should speak for itself, and this and that, and just how wrong-headed in this day and age, how wrong-headed that is. And I feel like, again, going back to some of these snarky replies I see on Craigslist, I feel like there's a whole bunch of screenwriters out there. I doubt at this point they're listening to this podcast or have made it this far into the podcast, but I do think that there's a lot of screenwriters out there that have the same sort of attitude that, just write a great script and the rest will take care of itself. I'm a writer. I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to do producing. I just want to write. And, in this day and age, I just think that that's just the wrong attitude. Again, I talked about this a lot on the 100th episode. If you are just supremely super talented, that might work out for you. But, if you're just, moderately talented and pretty smart, I think it's going to take more. And if you look at the people at the top of the profession, most of them have some experience doing producing and writing, certainly in the TV world. The top TV people are the showrunners. They are the producers. They are the ones managing these shows. So it's more than just, I want to be creative. I want to be the artist. Certainly in the TV industry, you have to have a business sense about you, and not just business, a people skills. You have to be able to deal with other people, the network, the higher ups, the TV executives, and you have to be able to actually run a company which is producing this TV show, this weekly TV show. So really keep that in mind. I think it's so important going back and getting some of these early credits, whether they be shorts or micro budget features, getting those credits and building a resume and building a long career, and not being too concerned. When Alistair says, it basically took him 10 years from the time he started doing music videos to doing his first feature film. It took him 10 years, and understanding that that's okay, and that might be the trajectory. It might not be a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year trajectory. It might be 10 years. The longest journey starts with the first step. Notice too, and I think this is another really interesting thing from this interview. Notice too, Alistair talks about that meeting he got with his first script, and they met with him because they liked a music video that he had done about a haunted house. So him getting this first movie made that he wrote and directed. It wasn't just about he did a bunch of music videos and that got the thing made. It was a combination of the two. He had the experience shooting the music videos, so he built a body of work. Then he also wrote the script with Luke and was able to get an agent in that. So it was really a combination of two things. He was doing more things. He was working in the industry as a production assistant, making connections. That's how he got the original script that they wrote. That's how they got that out there. They had connections in the industry because they were working in the industry. So they got their script out. But not only that, once somebody read the script and liked it, then they could take notice of this body of work that Alistair had. And it's Hollywood, so you never know. But if he hadn't done all of these music videos, it's highly unlikely that they would have let him direct it. They might have liked the script. They might have let him write. They might have hired him and Luke to write the script from their treatment, but it's unlikely that they would have let him direct it. So again, it's really a combination of multiple things and pursuing multiple angles and getting some synergy, doing these free shorts or free music videos, actually losing money doing them, builds a body of work. And then on the other front, you're writing great scripts. You're working in the industry, so you're making connections. So once you've written the script, then you could actually get it out to some people. And then again, just show some initiative on both fronts and the synergy that you have between all these different angles that you're pursuing. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.